All right, and welcome into the Fantasy Pros Fantasy Football Podcast. It's the Week 10 Instant Reaction Show coming to you live right here on the FP YouTube channel. I'm your host, Seth Woolcock, still riding high from an awesome football Sunday, and helping me break it all down from a fantasy perspective is a former news producer turned fantasy analyst. She's Tera Roberts. Tera, how are you, and how are the fantasy teams after Week 10 sitting?
Wonderful. This was a good week. This was the George Kittle coming out party. Everything has come together. All the wide receivers hit. Yeah, this was a beautiful fantasy week. I got zero complaints whatsoever about this one.
I'm glad to hear it. I feel like I can never put together the perfect week where, okay, maybe the fantasy options came through for me that I was betting on, but then the players that actually had hard, cold cash on did not come through for me. So always kind of battling the mix and match week, but that's just how it goes in this industry, right, baby?
Exactly.
All right, let's jump into things. And tonight's program does look like this, Tera. No Dr. Deepak Chone, but we will still break down the most notable injuries from some of the doc's notes, plus some fantasy football ramifications that could come from them. And we're also going to give you the top 5 storylines of the day. We'll take a trip to the panic meter. Then we'll round out the program with a rapid fire Q&A. So send any Sunday specific questions from any of the action that we saw today and how we can help you. We'll try to answer those for you. And before we jump in, shout out to everyone who's keeping us employed by either joining us on the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel or the audio feed. Please be sure, give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy this type of content, and make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're new. Help us get to 300,000 subscribers by the end of the season. We would really appreciate that. And Tera, we did have a slew of injuries, so let's jump right into it at the top here. And it starts with none other than New York Giants quarterback Jaxson Dart. He suffered a concussion against the Chicago Bears. Dart already cleared 26 fantasy points in 3 of his last 4 games before getting knocked out of this one. It was also his 6th game in 7 starts with a rushing touchdown. So someone who certainly puts himself in some positions to be vulnerable to big hits. We saw that on Sunday. Deepak is telling us that a possible return to action is coming here for Dart. It's a 50-50 chance whether he misses 1 week and then returns the next. No production dip typically seen upon return. So Tera, obviously potentially losing Dart for the next week hurts managers who were starting him. However, what does it mean having Russell Wilson potentially under center here, and how does it affect the Giants offense as a whole? Is there anyone you could trust with old baby Russ back out there?
Oh, sadly, it's probably only Wan'Dale Robinson. Darius Slayton, had a nice little game here, but unfortunately, with Russ at quarterback, we lean on needing a very specific, excellent matchup, and that is not the matchup that is coming up next week, unfortunately, against Green Bay. So, it's everyone that's downgraded. There really won't be any usable fantasy assets. Maybe a Theo Johnson perhaps can pull through there as the most reliable asset there. But yeah, we just we got to hope that Jaxson Dart comes back for our purposes.
Yeah, I think you're going to be hoping, if it is Russ under center next week, especially against Green Bay, that it's like deep balls, right? You're hoping for deep balls, big plays. I don't think the offense will move as consistently as it did with Jaxson Dart, because he's consistently tucking and running if the first or second read's not there. So I just don't know if he can do that, especially without Cam Scatterbu out there. Of course, no Malik Neighbors as well moving forward. So it's going to be a different Giants offense. I'm going to prefer not to start anyone. If I have to, though, I agree with you, is Wan'Dale Robinson or maybe a Theo Johnson at tight end. Also here on the injury front, we did have Buffalo Bills tight end Dalton Kincaid. He exited with a hamstring injury. Deepak is telling us that the average hamstring takes about 2 to 3 weeks, but really depends on the severity. MRI likely coming on Monday. Rushing back does raise the re-injury risk, so the vast majority will miss at least 1 game. Tera, we'll talk about potential replacements later on at the tight end position, but do you think Kincaid's absence maybe elevates any other pass catchers in the Bills offense that looked a bit out of sync here in South Beach in Week 10?
It did. They looked a little sideways there, unfortunately, in Buffalo. We can always feel like if Kincaid's out, we can turn to Dawson Knox. I mean, he doesn't have that same upside that Kincaid had. Kincaid had been operating at such a high level in games where he wasn't dealing with some kind of injury. I mean, we've come to look at him as an extremely reliable volume guy that was kind of running neck and neck with Khalil Shakir in terms of being the first look in that offense. So yeah, potentially you could turn to Dawson Knox. But I don't know if he will be the one getting the exclusive bulk of that workload. Perhaps we get a little bit of an increase there to the wide receivers, but that's a big letdown there, because Knox had been become a nice little safety blanket there and a deeper threat as well for Josh Allen.
Yeah, it's really disappointing because he was kind of the one pass catcher week in and week out that you wanted to start in your fantasy lineups. Shakir, of course, always goes off against the Chiefs. He was great last week, not as great this week. Same with Keon Coleman, who actually did have a bounce back spot for him, but he saw a ton of targets still. I mean, he caught 3 passes, 42 yards for a touchdown, something like that. So it wasn't great, but I mean, I guess if you have to throw a Bills wide receiver out there, you can play those guys and they might get a little bit of a bump with Kincaid out, but I'm still not, very interested in playing them unless I have to, I think so.
Yeah.
Another injury here, and maybe one of the biggest on the week too, Tera, is New York Jets wide receiver Garrett Wilson. He re-injures his knee. This is not ideal considering the potential tanking spot that the Jets are in right now. They did win this week, and Deepak is telling us that while Garrett Wilson did miss 2 games with the initial injury and reported, this was reportedly a re-aggregation of that same knee, this could potentially mean more time and a worse injury than the original, especially with the Jets season functionally being over. It would be surprising to see him play through next week. So likely no Garrett Wilson in week number 11. Tera, we'll keep up with Deepak to see what else he has to say about Wilson as news comes out, but is there a Jets pass catcher that you can even roster right now? Because I tried rolling out Mason Taylor this week in a couple spots where I was really hurting for a flex. Did not go well. Guy had about one point. So I'm done with Mason Taylor. And I really don't think we can go to the receiver position. Of course, A.D. Mitchell in there now, but Josh Reynolds on IR. It just feels super gross.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of long-term and dynasty in particular, I'm excited to see A.D. Mitchell. Hopefully he'll be active next week, but I would feel zero comfort in terms of throwing him into a starting lineup. They won the game, but at the end of the day, it was still an extremely low volume, underwhelming game from Justin Fields. And despite them winning the game, honestly, we don't know if he'll remain the starter. They seem very non-committal there, unfortunately. So this is a all-around avoid except Breece Hall there.
Yeah, we got our friend Redis checking in saying Fields had like 8 passing yards. Yeah, it was bad, man. It was a bad game. I just don't want to be invested, I don't think, with the Jets really, aside from Breece Hall at this point. Also here on the injury front, we have Denver Broncos running back J.K. Dobbins. He is getting a second opinion on a foot injury. It came on that hip drop tackle on Thursday Night Football. Dobbins did return to the game, but he's now getting a second opinion. Deepak telling us that the video did suggest a mid-foot sprain. On average, it's going to be about 3 weeks for running backs to return to action. Some reports did express optimism, though, which suggests he did avoid the surgical issue that is a Liz Frank injury. So that's great news. Typically, these do take a few weeks to ramp up to the baseline. So, Tera, I don't think there is enough information to really speculate on how long Dobbins will be out right now. Regardless, though, does it mean maybe some more work for RJ Harvey, or is this like a Tyler Bidet thing where he gets in the mix and it's kind of just a little bit complicated and not as much a workload as we want for the talented rookie?
Honestly, I do think it'll be a hefty workload for RJ Harvey. I know that feels uncomfortable to say with Sean Payton at the helm and knowing that he can do 10,000 different things. But in terms of usage, I feel like we've seen a clear shift in the usage of RJ Harvey compared to the earlier season where there was a clear lack of trust that Sean Payton had. He didn't trust him on the field and passing downs overall. And the shift to him being a extremely reliable and go-to guy in the red zone. Even if he didn't get the touchdown in this game, he still had pretty significant red zone usage. So based off that, I would expect that level of trust to extend out the red zone into the entire drive there. So yeah, I feel pretty good about RJ Harvey if we do get J.K. Dobbins out here.
Maybe a potential must start. Is that kind of where you'd put him, probably in that RB2 range?
Yeah, because the run game has been effective, but unfortunately, when you look at the split that they've had recently, because of RJ Harvey popping up in the red zone, and then the bulk of the carries going to J.K. Dobbins separately, they had pretty good baselines, right, and upside with RJ Harvey and the multiple touchdowns there. But if you combine that all together, yeah, you've got an RB1. So if it's narrowed down to Harvey, feel like a must start for him.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's where I would be. And honestly, it might be a chance that you can still maybe even go buy low for him right now because he had a bad game on Thursday Night Football. I think managers are frustrated with him. It's really been the touchdowns that have kept him in contention of fantasy relevance so far this season. I think you got to play him, though. I think you got to play him. I think you have to go after him and see if you can buy low because someone might not know the severity of the J.K. Dobbins injury right off the rip. So I'm in agreement with you there. Another injury at the running back position, maybe a little less notable, is New England Patriots running back Terrell Jennings. He was knocked out with a knee injury. Tera, while Jennings wasn't a player fantasy managers were certainly depending on, this could open the door for maybe even more work for TreVeyon Henderson if Ramondre Stevenson continues to miss time. Is that kind of your observation as well? Of course, we've already had a couple injuries in the backfield this year. Antonio Gibson out for the season currently.
Yeah, my exact thought process there. It didn't seem like Ramondre Stevenson was close to returning. So if he's out, and we also have Terrell Jennings out, I feel like that's where we finally get that forced usage in the red zone. We did finally see Henderson. He would, fantastic game. Unfortunately, did not get the goal line touchdown when he had that opportunity. But if there was nobody else to turn to, we can at least lock that down here. So yeah, it's good to at least take that away, that factor away of someone else being able to come in at the goal line there and know that we can focus in on Henderson, who looked fantastic today.
Yeah, I'm with you there. We'll talk more about Henderson later on in the program. Tara, we also had Chris Rodriguez. He got banged up in this one. If he misses any time, do you have any confidence in Bill Krosky-Merritt to become startable? Because it's his fifth straight game being held under 6 PPR points. It just feels like with Washington, the way their defense is playing, they are not in a position to run the ball and run it effectively without Jayden Daniels right now.
Yeah, I was a wee bit concerned that when we did have the offense transition away from Mariota at the end of the game, we still had Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt in there. So that was kind of like, okay. Now, granted, Chris Rodriguez going out there did make it, but it means that, Jeremy McNichols was the preferred sit and Rodriguez and JCM getting that garbage time work there with the backup quarterback. So yeah, I think it's significant because if you can narrow it down to where they don't have the option to turning to someone else, that can at least force that early down usage specifically to JCM. But at the end of the day, this offense has to be in a position to compete for JCM to have upside there. They've got to be in a competitive game where they're ahead. So that's the concern there, is that Chris Rodriguez going down could open up some opportunities there, but we still need the Commanders to compete in a more positive way.
Yeah, I think at this point, like, it really stands. Hey, you're starting Deebo Samuel. Likely, if you have him, he found the end zone once again in week number 10. But outside of that, like, this became one of the most fun, fantasy-friendly offenses a year ago, and it's crazy just what 12 months and a slew of injuries to some veteran players can do for you. So disappointing there, and disappointing with all the injuries. Hopefully, we'll get more information on that. Again, stay plugged into Deepak's social this week. He is at SportMD Analysis. He'll get you connected with all the injury news and notes that you need. And also, if you want to get a chance at winning this signed Justin Jefferson Minnesota Vikings jersey for free, courtesy of our friends over at pristineauction.com, all you need to do is head to fantasypros.com/contest, complete the form, and either A, download the free Fantasy Pros app, B, leave a review for the Fantasy Pros Fantasy Football Podcast, or C, follow us on X, Instagram, or TikTok. We are at Fantasy Pros. The more actions you complete, the more entries you're going to receive, and we will announce a winner right here on the channel, so make sure you subscribe. Ring the bell, turn on those notifications so you can be alerted when we have some new episodes and when we announce that winner. So make sure you guys are in there for that. And let's get to the top 5 storylines of the week. And I think there's no better place to go than overseas, where Jonathan Taylor says Guten Tag from Dublin, 32 carries, 244 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns on the ground. He also added 3 for 42 through the air. Good for a 50 burger, 50.1 PPR points. Tara, were you marked safe from JT this week? And if you were to redraft today, are you taking JT at the 101?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think for sure there. He's been so incredibly reliable. I was not marked safe because I was the perpetrator on that one with JT.
Nice.
Even the Scott Fish Bowl, he scored 80 points. That was just the most stunning amount of points I've ever seen out of a single player. He's so dominant. I'm 100% behind this, JT for MVP, because even when Daniel Jones struggles, and we've seen the struggles, Jonathan Taylor is willing this team to victory here. The performance, he's just incredible. He's our version of Saquon Barkley, but the difference is that it's on offense with a lesser quarterback in theory. So yeah, Jonathan Taylor really carrying the load there.
Yeah, it's so disappointing. I was talking to a few people this week, and they're like, man, I was just, 1 or 2 years early on JT, right? But it was kind of disappointing the last few seasons. The pass catching went away with Anthony Richardson, and it's just insane that what a good scheme and play caller that Shane Steichen is, man. Like, he is just making everything work right now. Really, really fun game for the Colts as a whole. Like, Alec Pierce getting involved, Michael Pittman Jr. a little disappointing, but Tyler Warren had a great second half there as well. So I think this wheels up on JT. I think if we were redrafting today, I think it's him. I think
Yeah.
it's him. And it's very sad to say because I think I had him outside my top 36 coming into the season. So I will take the L on Jonathan Taylor. I will not take the L, though, on good things come to those who wait. TreVeyon Henderson breaks out in week 10, 14 rushing attempts, 147 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground, plus a reception for 3 yards. Some big gainers for Henderson. The explosion we all saw at Ohio State a year ago totals 29 fantasy points, a career high. Tera, do you think things shake out here differently when Ramondre Stevenson returns this time? Because Mike Vrabel still hesitant to trust Henderson. While he was out there for 51 of the snaps today, we did see Terrell Jennings get the first couple carries in this one before he got ruled out for the rest of the way. So does Henderson go back to the non-factor he was, or is he the genie they can't put back in the bottle right now in New England, which is just clicking off wins left and right?
Yeah, I don't think there's any way that they can reduce his overall touches. I think the only fear that we might have is the lack of trust at the goal line is probably going to be a thing. So I wouldn't be shocked if we see Ramondre Stevenson come back and get that goal line preference. But quite frankly, the touchdowns came without the goal line. When you got that kind of breakaway talent there, you're a Jahmyr Gibbs type. You can do it without being inside the 5 there. So TreVeyon Henderson wheels up here, and then hopefully we retain enough touches when Henderson comes back.
Yeah, I agree. Very, very excited for him. And hopefully he can just continue to see somewhat of workload, right? Like it won't be 29 fantasy points. It won't be maybe even 14 rushing attempts. But if he can still live in that 10 to 12 overall touches a week, I think he's a flex viable guy. But maybe still time to potentially sell high, because I'm even seeing in the chat here from quite a few people mixed opinions on Henderson. A lot of people bought low on him a few weeks ago. Some are ready to sell high off this performance, which I don't blame you either way. Another note here is we have rookie receivers rising up. Tez Johnson and Jayden Higgins, they hit this week. Tez Johnson, 4 receptions, 42 yards, 2 touchdowns, 5 targets versus the Patriots. This was a cat that, honestly, coming into draft season last year, I was not very high on. I mean, he's a small guy. He's not extremely fast for his size either, but he's making it work. Ton of snaps for him this past week, 57 snaps. Only Emeka Egbuka saw more snaps than him. It's really those two guys. It's Sterling Shepard. And then you're seeing just a few snaps a game from Cameron Johnson and Ryan Miller. We do have the news, too, that Chris Godwin's going to be out likely until mid-November, potentially even into December if we ever see him back this season. And on the other side of the coin here, Jayden Higgins, career highs across the board against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Of course, this was with Davis Big Neck Mills under center, 5 receptions, 42 yards on 7 targets. So Tez is already rostered in about 27.9% of ESPN leagues. Where will you be ranking him moving forward? And is Higgins someone that you're worth picking up and spending some fab on this go around?
Yeah, I'm surprised how low Tez is rostered. It needs to be well over 50%. So if he's out there, guys, that needs to be your priority. You got to go grab him. And I moved him up into a low end wide receiver 3 range this week. And then, obviously I think that's a really appropriate range for him moving forward. Maybe we can tilt him up towards, the back, towards the end of the top 30. There is a nice little range for him. But, at this point, you got to trust that. I understand Mecca is fantastic, but the wide receiver 2 there is clearly Tez. The touchdown equity that he has had has been very consistent there as well. Baker Mayfield had the nice bounce back game after a couple of down games there. So Tez is somebody who is going to be a strong high-end flex option through, like you were saying, I would anticipate probably mid-December. So if we do actually believe the timeline that they're giving us there in Tampa Bay. And then Jayden Higgins, that's a fun one there, because when you look at Houston, realistically, they're looking at their record and they might be thinking, okay, like maybe we can still push forward and try to compete, but realistically, given our offensive line and everything, we probably need to look forward to the future here.
Good point.
And getting increased looks for these rookies, Higgins and Jalen Noel as well, makes so much sense there. And pushing forward with him. And it was good to see him have this volume and this level of performance and this usage on the field with a healthy and active Nico Collins and a strong performance as well. So that was really encouraging there. So yeah, I think Jayden Higgins makes a lot of sense. It might be a little matchup dependent as well.
I agree.
But Higgins is definitely worth a look.
Yeah, I think Higgins is one of those guys, if you're in a good spot in your league, if you're, well on your way to the fantasy playoffs and you don't have to start him over the next few weeks, he's someone that's worth a stash, in my opinion. 43 snaps for Higgins. We did see him for the first time this season actually outrun routes and snaps of Xavier Hutchinson, but Hutch still had 40, but he had no targets, no production whatsoever. and Noel getting on the field a little bit as well. 25 snaps to Christian Kirk's 32. So it's still a bit of a wide receiver by committee outside Nico Collins there, but Higgins, I think, is someone worth interesting enough to put on that roster moving forward if you're in a good position. I'm with you on Tez Johnson, man. I think he's like slowly getting into not every week starter, but every week flex consideration. Yeah. So if you got him a couple weeks ago, congratulations to you on that. The next storyline I wanted to talk about was Jaxson Smith-Njigba breaks 1,000 receiving yards in the first quarter of this game against Arizona, making his claim for wide receiver one rest of season. 5 for 93, 1 touchdown on 6 targets. Most of that came in the first quarter as well. So I was thinking, are we going to get a 30 or 40 burger from JSN? I certainly needed it on a couple teams and we didn't get it. But still, Tara, I feel like now we have a clear top tier wide receivers. It's Puka Nacua, it's Jamar Chase, and it's JSN. Is he above those guys rest of the way for you, or would you still prefer Nacua or Chase, who's just seeing a boatload of targets with Joe Flacco in the lineup?
You know, I think the one thing that maybe puts him above Chase is that Chase arguably does have the higher ceiling, but he does have more competition because, you know, on a week-to-week basis, it can be hyper-targeted to T. Higgins until that way a little bit that kind of take off the upside there. And Jaxson Smith-Njigba doesn't have to deal with that. You know, Puka Nacua has to deal with the Devontae Adams. The Seattle pass game is aggressively running through JSN. So perhaps that's what separates him a little bit there. But yeah, we've gotten to that point where he is right up there. Like I was, you know, in DFS, I was debating, am I playing Puka or am I playing JSN? Like it was literally neck and neck right in line there. That's the level that we trust him at this point.
Yeah, man, I'm super excited to see what he can do down the stretch in the season. Like he's not going to hit 2,000 yards or anything like that, but when you see what this guy is going to do from a season-long perspective, I mean, we're looking at 1,600 plus yards. We're looking at a boatload of receptions, and honestly, the touchdowns have come too. So Sam Darnold's been spinning it. Excited to continue to see what they can do, and hopefully we get a little better game flow there. Right, the Seahawks are kind of just so far. Yeah, I mean, what was it, 28-7 or something, maybe 28-0 after the first quarter? Like they were, I mean. Oh, shout out to that defense, man. They were all over Jacoby Brissett over there. So hopefully a better game flow for them and they can get some more action to the wide receivers. Last storyline of the week here, Tara, streaming tight ends, or are they just worth the roster spot moving forward long-term? We had a plethora of streaming tight ends show out today. That included 2 that Debro featured on this week's Sleeper Starts video. So shout out to Debro for that. And Tara, I wanted to play a game where I'll give you the stat line here for these tight ends and how they did in week 10. And can you just let me know whether they're still a streamer or maybe rosterable the rest of the way?
Sound good.
All right. Juwan Johnson, first one, 4 for 92, 1 touchdown on 4 targets, 19.2 fantasy points against Carolina. Of course, Rashid Shaheed out of town right now, so it's really him. It's Chris Olave. Is Juwan Johnson worth a roster spot, or is he still just, hey, I'll play him when I need to and just throw him back on the waiver wire?
It's roster. We're back at that trust level with him. We had that little like slightly early mid-season slump there where he kind of dipped down a little bit. Then he bounced back prior to this week, had several top 12 performances there, looking like a reliable tight end one. And the exit of Rashid Shaheed, yeah, that's the key there. That's the key there. So we got to trust it rest of season.
Yeah, I'd like to see the volume come up a little bit. It's still been in that 4 or 5 targets range the last couple weeks, but big plays right now. And Tyler Shuck definitely looks like he is a better option over Spencer Rattler as well. At least he was in this game where had a lot of money on the Panthers. So did not love seeing that come through, but shout out to Juwan Johnson. Dalton Schultz, 7 for 53, 1 touchdown on 11 targets, 18.3 fantasy points against Jacksonville. This was a guy I was really heavy on in DFS this week, very heavy in the betting streets as well. It feels like, you know, we already talked about Jayden Higgins, Noel kind of taking a step up there in Houston, but I think Dalton Schultz is for sure the number 2 target in this passing offense outside of Nico Collins right now. What do you think?
I'm on the edge there between a must start versus a streaming option, depending on the matchup there. I trust it, but I wonder if, you know, because these young guys are so talented. So I do wonder if Jayden Higgins can just slightly creep up in the snaps and try to push his way through there and then limit that upside for Dalton Schultz. So I think maybe the competition there makes him more towards the stream worthy option there for me.
Okay. What about Cade Otton? 9 for 82 on 12 targets, 17.2 fantasy points against New England. We already touched on this receiving core as well. No Chris Godwin, no Mike Evans for the time being. So it looks like it's Cade Otton, it's Tez Johnson, it's Emeka Egbuka. Do you like Otton rest of the way?
I do, because again, we talked, about the lack of trust that we have in the return timeline for
Mhm.
Chris Godwin. But then at the end of the day, Sterling Shepard has just been minimized so much in this offense at this point here. So it does feel very focused in on those three guys. And the run game is just like, we don't have a timeline on
Mhm.
Bucky Irving. So
Mhm.
if this is the core right here, then yeah, I trust it.
Theo Johnson, 7 for 75 on 8 targets, 14.5 fantasy points against Chicago. Theo Johnson, streamer or rest of season rosterable?
More towards the streaming option.
Okay.
I like him a
Mhm.
lot. I don't know if I trust that they won't integrate Daniel Bellinger a little bit there, here and there, and kind of limit his upside overall there. They should focus in just on Theo Johnson. And then again, the pass game is kind of inconsistent because at the end of the day, Jaxson Dart can literally just run around. He doesn't have to throw it for that much. So
Yeah.
that's the only issue there. So yeah, more towards the stream
Okay.
worthy option, but he's moving on up.
Can you rank these tight ends rest of season, Tara? What order would you have them in?
Yeah, I would lean Juwan, Cade, and then Schultz to Johnson. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I think I'm probably Schultz, Cade, Juwan, Theo. I'm a little bit higher on Schultz. Maybe that's a little bit of recency bias. And the reason I think I'm a little bit lower on Cade is while I love this volume, I don't know how many games the Bucks will have to chuck it and grip it and rip it like they did here against the Patriots when they fell behind early. Also, Cade's seeing a lot of volume, but he's not seeing like the high value targets, right? Not getting a ton of red zone looks, not getting a ton of deep targets right now. Maybe that changes as they continue to have to develop and strategize around the injuries they're facing there. But yeah, really enjoyed seeing these tight ends show out and show up in a big way here in week 10. And before we get to the panic meter, everyone, I did want to remind you all that we are proudly presented by the presenting sponsor of today's program, Hard Rock Bet. If you're listening to the podcast, you're probably deep into stats, injury reports, and of course, matchups as well. So you need to put your fantasy football test knowledge to the test on Hard Rock Bet today. Try your first bet on Hard Rock Bet. Just place a $5 bet, and if it hits, you not only get your winnings, but also $150 in extra bonus bets. And I'm sure that you're going to want to go over there and check out Hard Rock today because they also have the Stats Hub. It's loaded with trends, streaks, and stats to help guide your picks. Numbers don't lie, neither does the data in there. Check out the Stats Hub now. Get the edge and bet with confidence moving forward. The Hard Rock Bet Sportsbook app is the only legal sportsbook for whenever you're in the great state of Florida. I know our buddy Joey P was down there this past week. Hope he had a great vacation. It's also legal if you're in the states of Arizona, Ohio, New Jersey, Indiana, Tennessee, Virginia, Illinois, and Colorado. Coming soon to more states, hopefully Pennsylvania, because I'm excited to try it out. Plus, Hard Rock Bet officially gives you new promos every single day. So whenever you're listening to this, just open up the app and check out what they've got for you any day of the week. Download the Hard Rock Bet app now and make your first deposit. And let's go ahead, folks. Let's fire up the panic meter. Go ahead. Let us know who you're panicking about, and we'll rate them on a scale from 1 to 10 about how much we're panicking on these players. 1 means, hey, we're not really panicking at all. Times are good. Keep it cool. And 10 means it's full-blown panic mode, folks. So let's go ahead. Drop your panic meter questions below. And the first one I wanted to get to was Bijan Robinson. A lot of questions for Bijan coming in right now. Where's your panic meter on Bijan Robinson? Of course, we saw Tyler Algier find the end zone not just once, but twice in Germany today, Tara.
Oh, this is perfect. I do a 5 moves to make video, and my plan was actually to talk about Bijan as a buy low. And this confirms that, I think the general consensus in terms of fantasy managers are feeling really down about him. And I get it 100%. It's very frustrating because we know that his usage can be so much higher. And we've got this increased usage of Tyler Algier. It's very, very frustrating. The ceiling is not getting met for where you drafted him, but I think he's a really good buy low candidate right now. If you're looking to trade him, please don't undersell him. At the end of the day, he's still Bijan. You got to be looking at literally top 12 value in terms of getting something back for him.
Yeah, I think I'm there with you. Like, I don't know how many other players I would rather have. Right. I don't think there's too many other guys that I'm really trading for Bijan. Like, if you have to strip it down and sell him for like another lower end RB1 and maybe a wide receiver 2 or something, I'm okay with it. But yeah, I'm probably right in line with you. I'm at 1 and 2 with Bijan. Good players will come back, I think. And Atlanta needs to lean on him, man. The worst part of everything is they're just losing games continually. They're finding ways to lose. So appreciate the analysis there. We got Lance who's asking, is Kenneth Walker droppable right now? What is your panic level on Kenneth Walker? He goes out there once again. I don't have snap counts for the Seattle game, but 14 for 67, 1 reception, 3 yards. We did see the backup running back Halal, third stringer. He found the end zone. And then we also found Zach Charbonnet, who once again found the end zone. So what's your panic level on Kenneth Walker, who seemed to find some of that red zone work last week, and now he doesn't have it all of a sudden again?
Yeah, my panic level's at like a 9 here. I've tried to be in denial and just like, because him as a whole, he's talented. And I conceptually, I understand that they have their preferences in terms of, they're the exact opposite of Atlanta. Atlanta, if Tyler Algier carries them down to the goal line, Tyler Algier is getting that touchdown. They're not going to pull him out because of some kind of red zone preference there, right? So Seattle's truly limiting this overall upside for Kenneth Walker here. It's just been too many weeks in a row here at this point, unless Charbonnet goes down with an injury. And then you mentioned Halani getting that goal line touch as well. That was highly concerning for them to turn to him too. So yeah, we're at a, I don't think that he is at the droppable level, because at the end of the day, you do still want to stash him in case something does happen to Zach Charbonnet. But I think we're at the point here where our rankings are Zach Charbonnet is operating as the RB1 there, and Kenneth Walker unfortunately has to come down. It's crazy. Yeah.
George Halani, I called him Halal. I think I'm a little hungry. I think that's
right.
Where the mindset went there. But yeah, it was definitely frustrating, and hopefully things turn around for Kenneth Walker. I just don't know at this point. Like, the upside's not there that we thought it was going to, either in the pass catching department or in the red zone. So I'm there with you. If someone's willing to buy him at a reasonable price, I think you should consider moving off Kenneth Walker. I just don't trust it week in and week out. And look, the Seahawks are a good team right now too. So I think they're really going to want to keep these backs healthy for the stretch run and try to make a push in the playoffs. Davante Adams, we did see him flare up with a back issue. I believe he did return to the game, or at least looked like he could have returned to the game if they needed him in this one. I mean, I don't get why there's any panic on Davante Adams. 19.7 fantasy points for him today, 6 for 77 and a touchdown, coming off a 2 TD game last week. I mean, he's been great. So I got a 0. I don't know why anyone would be panicking about Davante Adams other than maybe just the injury flaring up. What about you?
Yeah, I don't know. I tried to, because I saw it prior to the game as well, some question marks around him. I don't know if it's skepticism around him being touchdown dependent, which I get, because his targets definitely came down with Puka Nacua being in there. But at the end of the day, the red zone usage for him from Matt Stafford has been way too specific at this point. There's touchdown dependent, and then there's a quarterback locking in on you. So yeah, we trust it. He's a top 20 receiver on a weekly basis.
Here's a question from Stink asking the panic meter level on Lamar Jackson. Oh man, like it hasn't been awesome for Lamar this season. He missed, the whole month basically stretch there where he was inactive. Of course, one of those games was the Ravens bye, but he's come back 26 fantasy points last week, 17 today. So it hasn't been exactly what we were looking for. Lamar, only a 58% completion percentage today. So is that why people are panicking here? And what is your panic level meter on Lamar Jackson?
My panic level is probably like a 1. I'm good with Lamar. This game was obviously highly disappointing, especially because Minnesota's defense has been very exploitable. So I honestly thought that we were getting a much higher fantasy day from both him and Derrick Henry.
Yeah, I don't want to say, I want to say I'm a 4 maybe. And like, I don't think it's because of necessarily the production, but it's more, look what's coming up next. It's Cleveland. It's the Jets. I don't know if Lamar has to do a ton in those games to win those ones. Then it's the Bengals. Then it's Pittsburgh. So 2 good matchups there. Then we're back in Cincinnati, though, and then New England and Green Bay to end out the run. So, like, honestly, like, I don't want to, again, don't want to sound the alarms, but if someone's out there still willing to give you draft day capital for Lamar Jackson, and you have a Joe Flacco out there, maybe you have Jaxson Dart, and you can get by for a week without Dart if he is out with an injury, I'm okay moving him for a position player, but I think I'm always in that mindset, Tara, as we get kind of down the stretch here. Can we move some of these quarterbacks, these onesies positions for a skill player? Because I don't know if your RB room and wide receiver rooms are the same for me, but I got no one right now due to the injuries.
Yeah, makes sense.
What about AJ Brown? We haven't seen him play yet this week, but it's been a very up and down season for Brown. He's, of course, coming off the injury this past week. still right now hanging around 12.4 fantasy points per game. So certainly not what we expected when we drafted him in the second round of redrafts. But last time we saw him, still 28.1 fantasy points, Tera.
Yeah, this one is interesting because I know a lot of people are high on Devontae Smith in this matchup, which makes sense. Green Bay, you assume, tougher coverage going to AJ Brown and whatnot coming off of the injury. Although I will say he practiced in full, both him and Saquon. So it sounds like they came out perfectly fine out of the bye week. So we don't have to be concerned around that. But yeah, AJ is one of those guys. And same thing with Devontae Smith. I say with these guys, anytime you get a boom game from them, try and sell because at the end of the day, Philadelphia wants to run the ball. We saw Saquon finally have that breakout game prior to the bye week here. So if they can continue to have Saquon moving forward, yeah, there's a certain level of panic that you always have to have with those Philadelphia receivers.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. Bo Nix or Michael Pittman? Any concern? Michael Pittman, I'm not worried about. I think it was just a weird game. Alec Pierce got more involved, and I think it's just how the coverage was set up there. Debro talked about that on the Sleeper Start episode, that it made for a more advantageous matchup for Alec Pierce rather than Michael Pittman, who saw a really good cornerback in A.J. Terrell, who isn't necessarily like an elite quarterback that I think everyone thinks he is, but he's still one of the better ones. So I got a 0 on Pittman. Bo Nix, maybe a 3. What about you, Tera?
Yeah, I think the AJ Terrell thing. Shout out to my boy, my Clemson AJ Terrell.
Yeah, there you go.
To my little thing back there, but Pittman was wide receiver 10 heading into this week. But you're right, Steichen is a very intelligent coach. If there is a matchup where they feel they need to pivot away from them, they just straight up do it. So those games will happen. Just don't panic over that. It's matchup based. Bo Nix, yeah. The problem is that Bo Nix looks bad is the issue there in general. Even in games where he pushes high volume from a fantasy perspective, it still looks extremely sketchy. So we're definitely seeing the year 2 problems. The good thing is that he's got a plethora of weapons. Cortland Sutton has obviously calmed down there, unfortunately. But Troy Franklin stepping up big time there. We talked about RJ Harvey from a receiving perspective. So Bo Nix is moving it back a little bit in the fantasy rankings. He's more of a streaming option, unfortunately, here, just because of the lack of reliability that we can have and the fact that the floor has gotten so low for him.
Yeah, Kansas City next week, so I'm not super high on him against the Chiefs. And then it will be a bye week for Bo Nix, and then Washington, Las Vegas. So I like those 2 matchups, but it's Green Bay, Jacksonville, and KC to end the season. So not as high on his playoff schedule. Like, if you have Bo Nix, Tera, I think it's time to, whether it's Jaxson Dart, even if he's on the shelf for a week, or if it's Joe Flacco, maybe even Sam Darnold, I think you do go and try to look for another option as well to just have with him. So love that. Also, loving the Fantasy Pros Discord community right now with everything we have rocking and rolling over there. You can chat with other fans and get access to exclusive AMAs that actually are going to wind up on our podcast feed, folks. So it's a very fun time. You can chat with all the analysts, ask questions in there as well. Our schedule for the rest of the season looks like this. Worm and Fitz are on with you at 5 Eastern on the first Tuesday of every month. And then Boggs and Fitz, they're talking Dynasty at 5 Eastern on the third Tuesday of every month. Plus Welsh and Erickson live Thursdays at 2 p.m. Eastern time to take your questions and chat with y'all. So come get your questions answered. Be on the show at fantasypros.com/chat. And guys, go ahead and drop any questions you have for us as we have about the next 5 minutes of the program to get those to you before Sunday Night Football kicks off. Steelers tonight, so looking forward to that one, and hopefully my home team can get one done. First one I wanted to go to was with our friend Victoria asking, is Jameson Williams a starter rest of season? It's been sketchy, Tera. It has been sketchy if you've had Jameson Williams roster pretty much anytime this season. He's had duds, he's had donuts. But then he has games like today, 23.9 fantasy points, 119 yards on 6 receptions, 7 targets for him, coming off a 16.6 game last week. So where are you at on JMO right now?
For the most part, and there have been some weird exceptions, but for the most part, we can predict his boom games. They come in good matchups, right? So you just have to be able to pinpoint that down. And that being said, the play, when we're looking at his rest of season schedule, it's kind of shaky here in the next week. But after that, there are definitely a lot of matchups where he can go off there. So yeah, rest of season, he is moving up a little bit here just because the schedule does look like it benefits him specifically.
Okay. And shout out to our friend Danny giving a little love to Debro on the Alec Pierce start. Should have tailed him on that one. Hey, I get it, man. I get it. Alec Pierce has not been fun to have in fantasy for about 4 years now. So every time we get this kind of, late contract breakout, it's hard to commit to it, but the play was there. So I understand the frustration. And Angie checking in with us as well, saying fun to my favorites. Great to see you, Angie. I got to connect with you earlier this week on a call. So glad to see you hanging out with us here. Our friend Redis as well, also in the chat here. Tera asking, did Marks finally overcome at Nick Chubb? It was just 10 snaps for Nick Chubb today. We saw Woody Marks really dominate the touches. At one point, it looked like, did he just suffer an Achilles injury or something? Because like he went down, non-contact injury, walking off, but he was fine. He was right back in there. So is it Woody Marks over Chubb the rest of the way? Did he finally get over this speed bump that was Nicholas Chubb?
Yes, finally. Thank goodness, because we have been waiting for that one. I've been ranking it as such just because at the end of the day, Chubb lacks upside. So if anyone was going to give you any upside as a starter, it was going to be Marks. But to see him kind of separate himself there, it's tough to trust the Texans in terms of how they're shaking out that backfield. But I want to believe in it that we finally overcome that hump.
Yeah, I hope so. I certainly hope so. Amazon Pancakes asking, I have a Buka and Tez. I was looking to possibly trade Tez. Who are some high upside wide receivers I should target in trades? I think you're in a weird position here with Tez Johnson. While I think he has value and he's a guy worth playing, I think he's almost more valuable to your team than what you're going to get out there on the open market for him, Tera. Like, I don't think you could really you could probably get like Terry McLaurin for him right now. I don't think I would do that. You could probably get like Jacoby Myers. I think those are like some high upside guys, but I just don't think you're going to get what Tez is worth right now in a weekly lineup.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's more valuable on your roster. And I know often we want to differentiate and not be starting two guys from the same team there. But at the end of the day, just based off the vibes that I see in terms of like how people are valuing him, I don't think it's high enough yet to get really what you deserve out of it.
Yeah. I'm totally there with you. Keep on hanging on Amazon and, throw them out there if you need it. Throw them out there if you need them. And if like you need maybe like a buy low or running back, like Jordan Mason's been absolutely garbage for a couple of weeks. Maybe you can go get something like done like that. I think that would be your play, right? Maybe go to a running back who hasn't been performing as much of late. Also, we have Michelle checking in saying, my wide receivers are Sutton, Debo, Keenan Allen, Pearsall, Booty, and Jennings. I'm panicking about all of them. Jerry Judy, Parker Washington, Keon Coleman, all on waivers. What should I do? I mean, Parker Washington, I think definitely needs added.
Yeah.
I don't know how you get out of this situation though, Tera.
I would. So I love Keyshawn Booty. I would drop him for Parker Washington just because it's possible that we've seen enough potential, so we saw a little, big play from Kyle Williams. We saw Mac Hollins involved there. So it's possible we get things spread out a little bit there. And it's not as if Keyshawn Booty was a high target guy. He was really thriving there off of being efficient and touchdowns as well. So if I had to apples drop one for Parker Washington, yeah, it would be him, because I definitely think Parker Washington needs to be rostered. You can't turn from Pearsall yet. I've got a theory with San Francisco that they're just holding on as long as possible because they're in a winning position and their schedule is extremely soft. So they're holding those guys that are close until they absolutely need them. So we'll probably see him and Ayuk return in the next couple of weeks here. So I think we're close. I think we're close on him. So don't bail out yet. Yeah.
I mean, I think if you're doing anything here, like I'm hoping, Michelle, you've really good running backs, and maybe you can trade a running back and go get yourself a stud receiver. Can you get rid of running back and trade an RB with maybe like a Keenan Allen, who's kind of going down in snaps a little bit, Juwan Jennings, who I trust him about as far as I can throw him right now. So that would kind of be my opinion on how you should go through that. Last one here from Denny, Tera, Sutton or Franklin rest of the season. I think it's still Cortland Sutton. I don't think we can panic on a guy who's wide receiver 10 right now, averaging 12.7 fantasy points per game. Yes, it was a down week against the Raiders, but that was also just such a weird game. And I hate Thursday night games in general and what they do to some of the wide receiver ones of offenses.
I think I've seen enough to flip it. Which is
really?
When I was super pro Cortland, I've got the dumbest amount of Cortland Sutton humanly possible. Super pro Cortland Sutton coming into the season. Well, we got to remember this, the existing rapport from college between Franklin and Bo Nix. We might
Fair.
just be seeing the culmination of that finally coming up now that Franklin is just getting on the field consistently, because we didn't see that in the rookie season. Sean Payton was just holding him back there in the corner. So him finally getting on the field consistently, earning that trust, and he's got that connection. I can't say that I'm shocked.
Okay. All right. Well, you heard it here first. It seems like some people are low on Courtland Sutton, including our friend Tera. So maybe a time to go buy low on Courtland Sutton if he's out there and someone's offering him up for a good price. But yeah, I think both of those Broncos pass catchers are reliable options the rest of the way. Again, keep in mind, we do have a bye week in week 12, so they will be on the shelf for that. Kansas City next week, I don't love, but then you do get a couple good matchups in week 13 and 14 with the Commanders and the Raiders, respectively. That is going to do it for us today on this episode of the Fantasy Pros Fantasy Football Podcast. Let us know below down in the comments your favorite and biggest winners and losers from week 10. We want to hear from you. Also, make sure you're smashing that like button on YouTube and subscribing to the show if you're new. Tera, what do you got coming on this week? I believe 5 moves to make. I think that's the first thing that will hit the YouTube this week from you. Is that correct?
It will. And spoiler alert, you guys dropped comments about several of the guys that we'll be talking about in there. So I got some solutions for you.
Awesome. Well, I can't wait to see that. And so much good content coming over here at Fantasy Pros this week. So make sure you guys are checking out the website for the written content, the rankings, the tools, everything like that. And then you're hanging out right here every single day on the FP YouTube channel. We're also over on Twitch live multiple times throughout the week. So it's very, very thankful for you, Tera. Very thankful for the audience being here with us today. For Tera Roberts, I'm Seth Woolcock. Take care, y'all, and have a great rest of your Sunday. Thank you.